Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste, hello again. Today we will discuss the module 3 of our ongoing course, Role of Craft and Technology in Interior Architecture. This module concentrates on understanding and establishing interrelationships between interior architecture and craft and technology. The contents of the module: space making crafts and space making elements, examples, the overview of the module and some references that will be beneficial for all of us. Now, before understanding the interrelationship between craft and technology and interior architecture, it is very important that we try to understand what are space making crafts and what are space making elements. We already have a little understanding of the concepts of space making and place making. So, with that understanding, let us just try to move on. If I want to simply put it in a sort of an equation, let us just say, then I would like to put it as space making elements plus space making crafts is equal to interior architecture. Now, what we see common over here in both of these terms, it is space making. Space making is of very crucial point and role over here in this equation. So, we can say that space making elements and the space making crafts, they together create interior architecture. And when we talk about this creation, there is a great role of materials, skills, tools, techniques, technology, the entire process involved. So, just starting from this basic equation, we will just move on and see elaborately what are space making elements, what are the crafts and how do they create interior architecture. This is one chart that is prepared by DICRC at CEPT University, the center that I have been mentioning. Like even I was a part of the initial program and the entire framework that had come up. So, they have defined space making elements and space making crafts in a very comprehensive way. So, space making elements could be referred to as interior and architecture elements that make space. Now, these elements could be architectural, like we have a floor, wall, column, roof, staircase. These elements could be at the interior level, like the door, window, partition, some furniture or a fixture, or they could be ornamental, like a surface finish, color or artifact, like an object for decoration. So, this is the list for space making elements and more could be added to these. Now, if we talk about space making crafts, the crafts which are related to buildings, that is interior architecture, and which generate or define or enhance all these space making elements that we see over here, they could be classified as space making crafts. And like we saw in module 2, these crafts are also defined through medium, the material. So, we have here materials like wood, stone, glass, there is metal, clay, terracotta, or largely we can call them as earth materials. Then we have bamboo or cane, there is also fabric. So, this is a comprehensive list, and once we have a slight understanding and as we graduate towards other modules, we can have a clear understanding, a clear perspective, we can add dimensions to all this available literature and data and the framework. Okay, so space making crafts then, borrowing from the understanding from all the previous slides, they could be defined as crafts which are directly or indirectly related to interior architecture. And like we had a very slight discussion in the earlier module, they are more popularly called as architectural crafts or building crafts, and they largely contribute to this entire building sector, the construction industry. For example, bamboo crafts, again, if we don't use them only for utility, like a basket or a mat, but if we incorporate them for creating the entire structure of a building, whether it's a foundation or a column or a wall, then we would like to call it as a space making craft. Another example is stone crafts. If they are not used only for decorative objects or some votive purposes, but for example, say jali in a building, like we see in very old buildings, the monuments, the stone jalis. So, if they are created for that, then we might call them as space making craft. Now, jali is not something just very ornamental, it has a great role uh, for the climate purposes. For example, it contributes to thermal comfort, maintaining mass void ratio, also reducing the weight of the structure and the stone. So, again this could be termed as a space making craft. Let us just go through a few slides which discuss about space making elements and crafts, and there are a lot of visuals and illustrations so that we can understand them more nicely. So, this is a door like we discussed in that chart. This is again like a space making element, and the kind of this intricate exquisite carving over here that we see, varied motifs. Here there is another door jamb. Both of these examples are from Almora in Uttarakhand, and they have been done painstakingly by hand, by communities, by craft persons. And this is a timber door. There is lot of variety of timber in Uttarakhand. So, this space making element, when there is a role of a material, a craft, a skill, then it has a very different vocabulary, it has a different experience altogether. So, this could be one space making element, and this wood carving could be termed as space making craft. Here again there are few examples. This is a building called Radha Swami Samadh in Agra. I had done my research extensively on this building when I was doing my masters of interior architecture at CEPT. It was done under the guidance of Dr. Seema Khanwalkar. So, these are some inventories. Let me just try to explain. For example, if we take arch, that is again a space making element. Here if we see these pictures, we see lot of pictures of arches, stone arches that have been done in this building. So, as a space making element, how can I define varied functions of arch? So, here it is breaking the mass visually, there is a visual link to the outside world from inside. Here the arch is actually acting as subdivision of space. Here if we see arch, it is like very elaborate, lot of details, and it helps in defining the entrance of this huge monument. Here if we see the arch, there are punctures in the plane, there is mass and void. So, there are different examples, and if we see over here, there is lot of carving happening, there is lot of inlay work happening. So, here this inventory explains this space making element along with the kind of craft that goes in the making of them. So, these arches are load bearing, few are decorative, few are true, few are false. The stone craft that we see over here is carving, there is some inlay work that is happening, and we see lot of build forms. The arches are of different forms. We see the Hindu arch over here, the Gothic arch, Islamic arch. Then we see the type of construction, few have 2 centers, few have 4 centers. So, it is a huge inventory. I will not go into the details, but just to give an idea, how do we understand interior architecture or a built form in terms of these crucial space making elements, and how do they contribute in telling the story about that building. So, if we see narratives, the stories, the arches tell us the stories of function, expression, of visual aesthetics, also structural dexterity and lot of tenacity with which the craft persons have worked. Another element if we take is the column. We know column is like very crucial, and everybody just talks about column in terms of structure and also in terms of lot of ornamentation. So, here again we see lot of observations and images of the columns from this huge monument. Again, columns have different roles to play, they have different functions. Few are for visual aesthetics, like here this is the column capital and it immediately shifts my eye level and the cone of vision. So if I am walking on a plain surface on a floor and there is so much carving, immediately my cone of vision will change and I will start looking upward. So that way column helps as a visual element. It shifts our eyes, it helps us in movement. It is structural, so it carries the load and transfers it to the base. Then here we see the twin columns, they are very rhythmic, they generate an expression, a rhythm. Here if we see that there is a colonnade along with the arches, colonnaded arcade, it creates a play of light and shadow and it's very beautiful to walk through. So again lot of functions. Then there are different types, different kinds of stone craft that go into them. The craft of making the column itself, like functionally, technically, how we are erecting the column. Along with that, there are kinds of crafts that are going on that. The stone carvings here predominantly. So we see the craft forms. Also there are different build forms, few columns are circular, rectangular and different examples. Again there are a lot of stories to tell, so a lot of experiences attached to this. This is another element, dome. So here if we see dome, here there are few examples, few images. Some construction work was going on when I had documented the dome. Now dome is here like an epitome. It is very grand, it has an elaborate filigree work. Filigree work is another craft, maybe we will see in one of the modules what it is about. So it has lot of semantics, symbolism and meaning. It connotes to the universe, it implies convergence of people, it has a metaphysics. And the way it is constructed, and we see the elements of Hindu dome and Muslim dome with lot of carvings, lot of details. Here if we see, I do not know how much clear it is, here there is a very elaborate carving which is called as pahadi work that is happening at this base of the dome. So that is very intricate, it is very deep, like 4 to 5 inches, and it is done with hands, it is beautiful, very aesthetic. Now if I talk about space making craft, we were talking about space making elements, now let us talk about space making craft. So let us just say that we talk about carvings. Here there are few other examples. We see very exquisite stone carvings. Here this is a column capital again. We see over here the spaces in between the arches. Here like what I showed in the previous slide, the base of the dome, the pahadi work. Then we have it on the plinth. So many details, so many motifs, lot of floral motifs, connection with nature. We have the Radha Swami building monograms over here which are also stone carved. So all these space making elements, they are very much enhanced by the crafts. At few places they are defined by these crafts. At some instances they are generated by these crafts. So there is this very crucial interrelationship between space making elements and crafts which help them to define each other. Here if we just have a look here. So all the elements that are constructed on the site, and there is a process involved. There is first plane work, then the carving or inlay, the craft form, then there is pre-erection, then the assembly happens, then erection happens, finally the polishing happens. So these are all space making elements, space making crafts, and they contribute in creating such wonderful interior architecture. Another example, if we move forward, this is the Mysore Palace. Here if we see the space making elements and the crafts. So here this is like the onion dome, the space making element. These are the domed kiosks. Third one here, the balconies. Here we see the miniature arches. So these are all elements, and this is again a very aesthetic and a very monumental building. Here we see there are stained glass in the interiors. Again that is a glass craft which helps in accentuating the interior architecture. We have some rosewood inlay here that is again seen in the interiors. So this is one example. These are some examples from the Amber Palace, Jaipur. We see lot of stone crafts over here, stone jalis, the kind of views and vistas which are created by these space making elements. And these are all experiences also. They have lot of stories to tell, they create lot of memories for us. This slide talks about some space making crafts and space making elements of a village Kalsi, Uttarakhand. This is inhabited by a tribal community and they do all the construction or the making very indigenously using the local material, which is primarily stone. These are few other examples from Uttarakhand. Also see there are some examples of hardware. There are some examples of paintings of frescoes, the like we were talking about the surface finishes. We see railings, we see some temples, we see some example of Koti Banal architecture. These are some examples from old Havelis of Roorkee. So, all of this again tells us lot about space making elements and space making crafts and how do they contribute in creating interior architecture, beautiful spaces. Again there are few examples which are contemporary and I will run through them. Now I have deliberately put some contemporary examples because if we talk about space making crafts, I just want all of us to understand that it's not just about nostalgia, being very romantic about the past and just talking about the craft forms which are very traditional. But it's also to talk about continuity. So tradition and continuity. How do we apply these craft forms? Well, maybe not apply, integrate. Application is also fine, but how do we apply and integrate these craft forms in our contemporary interior architecture practices? So these are some examples. This is work done by an architect and designer, Rushad Shroff. He belongs to Mumbai. He has a studio. This is a project that I really like. Here in this project, the carpenters and the weavers, they have worked hand in hand to create some fascinating furniture pieces. And if we just see the process here, the drawings and then how the carpenters are working. Here we see the embroiderers and the weavers, how they contribute. So here we see the weaving patterns, they come on the timber which are created through the punctures of the drilling machine and then by inserting the yarn and the fabric. Here we see this is the result. We have these beautiful surfaces and furniture pieces which are done by the marriage of these two craft forms, furniture craft and weaving craft, and we have two communities working on them. They are giving respect to the craft persons. Projects like this, they also bring economy for them. They are very contemporary and they are still hands on. So it's a very nice project and I appreciate the work done here. Here also not just the furniture like door, we discussed about door as an interior space making element. So here this is the door which is again created through the same process. This is a tabletop which is created through the same process. Very fascinating, very interesting, visually appealing, also functional. So very interesting example. This is another example from the same studio. They had designed this signage for the Lodha group. Now if we look at this, in the first instance lot of us would think that these are just bulbs and they are just lit from behind through electric wiring, but that's not so. These are actually stone bulbs. So there is a turning machine, a turning lathe on which wood turning also happens, and then there is a turning machine for stone. So these are turning machines have been used here to create these stone bulbs, and then of course they are lit. So it creates a very interesting signage and again it gives lot of credibility to the craft persons who are working on stone and who are using these lathe machines. They usually work on temples using this machine and for other objects which are decorative. So this craft here is recognized and it is here they have utilized the skills of the community and created this beautiful signage. There are few examples again of furniture. This I have taken from the works of Sarthak Sahil and they are based in Delhi. So if we see this furniture, there is a whole range and this is created by the leftover pieces of rugs and fabrics. So it's called Katran collection. So there is a metal framework and there is this lot of katran, and then they have created this exquisite furniture range which is very vibrant, functional, aesthetic. This was a news article on their work which is very fascinating to me. They also work on some interior architecture projects, not just at the furniture level but the space creation. This is very interesting. I like this work a lot. So we have bangles over here, there is a simple metal hanger and there is a light fixture which is created out of it. So this is again very interesting. Here we have chandeliers and lamps, there is jute over here, there is some lighting, there is a metal framework. So there is a synthesis of different materials, different skills, different craft forms, and there is a lot of sensibility. You know what kind of experience is getting created in the space when one is situated, like the kind of reflections over here that we see and the kind of color scheme that is used. So that is very interesting. This is a furniture piece again, that is a table. So there is timber, then we have some copper craft. We are situated here in Uttarakhand, and here the tamta, the copper craft which is called as tamta work, is very famous. So again there is a synthesis of two craft forms but in a very contemporary way. So we were discussing that the craft also happens at the surface level in the form of surface finishes, in the form of paintings. So many of us would have already seen these. They are very famous ritual designs which have been found in the caves in southern France, and this is all about communication, all about surface treatment, about paintings, about stories. I would just like to read a quote. "The image existed before the word, and man's first recorded attempts to define reality were drawings on the walls of rocks or caves, scratches, hammered or painted pictures." So this is actually how our journey started about communication, and this is how we have now graduated towards paintings and surface finishes and whole lot of explorations from companies like Asian Paints, where they make lot of motifs, they design different kinds of finishes for surfaces and so on. So I will just give you the overview of the today's module. This is again one diagram or an infographic which is borrowed from DICRC at CEPT. So different kinds of crafts, traditional crafts, handicrafts, handlooms, heritage crafts, studio crafts, digital crafts, contemporary crafts, all of them actually contribute to this larger sector of building crafts, and these building crafts then contribute in creation of interior architecture which are defined through materials, different materials. So wood craft, earth craft, stone craft, there is even grass craft, metal craft, textile craft, leather craft, and it is very important that we recognize this sector, we recognize these works and involve them in our pedagogy and interior architecture practices through there is research, documentation, mapping, workshops, innovative studios which are collaborative, we have training, then there is collaborative dissemination, and I am very proud that DICRC is doing all of this extensively, and it feels nice that I have been a part of them in their initial years, and we still collaborate for varied activities. They have a website, all of you can go and see that. So when we talk about this larger sector of building crafts or space making crafts, they contribute in making of space, and that happens in two ways. It is happening either structurally or through surface development, and it happens at varied levels, like at the level of building, at the level of furniture, at the level of objects and artifacts, interior architecture elements that we just saw, surface finishes, surface ornamentation, even hardware and accessories. So all of it we saw in the previous slide. So this one like is the best infographic to sum up everything and give you an overview. So again, just a summary, the crafts which have space making attributes, they are called space making crafts or building crafts or architectural crafts. We can see these craft forms as surface finishes like paintings, plasters, surfaces. We can see them as structure, load bearing, foundation, wall, column. We can also see craft as ornamentation. So there is carving, relief, inlay, filigree work. And we also see craft as objects, so display, decoration, products for utility. I would just like to end with this quote: one cannot beat the intimate understanding of material, process, and form that comes from a craft education. All designers and architects should go through a few years of hands on material training. It would make them better at their job. So, I would urge all of you who are seeing this course, please indulge more in hands on. Try to understand the material around you. Speak to the material, just see what are their properties, how do they speak back to you, and it will improve your process and the outcomes. These are few references. They are very miscellaneous and they are going to help us understand this subject at large. Thank you.